we have set the time and we must start. Whoever misses the broadcast live will have the opportunity to get the recordings, and it will still fulfill its aim. All right, this is ACOMART webinar. This is the fourth version, fourth edition, and we are proud to present this to the world. And the last edition that we had was on film business, focusing on Afrocentric films. And we had robust engagement in that discussion 2 months ago. We have continued to receive follow-up from all of our webinars, and the conversations are increasing. Conversations are getting deeper, and the consciousness of the people to Afrocentrism and Afrocentric films and content is increasing. And we are thankful for everyone who has been following through, who has been visiting and coming in to join the conversation. We must continue to have these conversations. Some people will say, yeah, all talk, no action. But I say actions begins from talks. When we keep talking, actions will follow. Several years ago, there was a gentleman who was screaming, I have a dream in the US. I have a dream, I have a dream. It was a conversation. It was a scream. It was shouting. It was talk. But someday, years after, about 50 years after, the dream came through when Hussein Barack Obama became the president of the United States. Of course, the inequality in the United States still subsists, but the awareness is increasing by the day. So we must continue to have conversations like this. We must continue to talk. Talk is good. It may look to be cheap, but I believe talk is the beginning of every greatness, every great thing. You cannot be a leader without talk. You can't be a president, a mayor, governor without talking. You can not even get into a relationship without talking. You need to talk. So we will talk. We will continue to talk until every part of the world understands what we are talking about. Today, it's going to be money matters. The matters today is about money. We all understand that we cannot possibly achieve anything substantial without money. Money, money, money. Your idea dies in your mind, dies in your brain, dies on the paper. If there is no money to bring out the ideas to fruition, so money is needed. Little money is needed for little project. Huge money is needed for huge project. When we look at film production in the Western world, United States, for example, the Hollywood, multi-million, billion budgeted on films. And we know when we see the results of these productions, we know that, yes, money has got a lot to do with the finesse and with the outcome of production. Today, we are talking about money attracting investment into Africa's creative industry. Attracting investment into Africa's creative industry. From within the house, a well-resourced personality in this business is one of our guests today as panelists. We have Ms. Cassandra Onwualu. I will allow her to introduce herself, but before she does that, let me present her Bio. She is passionate about filmmaking and the business of film. Cassandra is a film producer and the head of business development and content strategy at ACOMART. Her experience working in Nigeria, in Africa, in Paris, France, allowed her to cultivate excellent cross-cultural competence and interdisciplinary skills and lends a certain nuance to her work. Cassandra is fluent in French, Igbo, her native dialect, English, the Nigerian, Pidgin, and Creoles. I should come to your school to learn Creoles. Cassandra is also skilled in translation and interpretation. She relishes storytelling, globe-trotting, and learning about different cultures around the world. Cassandra has a degree in communications and public relations from École Supérieure de Gestion et Commerce International, Paris, France. And she's an alumnus of the United States Department International Visitor and Leadership Program, IVLP. Ms. Onwalu enjoys networking and collaborating with people from all over the globe. I present to you Ms. Cassandra Onwalu. Please, Cassandra.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Am I echoing? It sounds like I'm echoing.
I can feel you're good from my side.
Okay, I'm good. So, yes. So I don't think there's anything else to add. I'm very honored to be on this panel. You know, the African creative industry, you know, film and even beyond film is something that I'm very passionate about. And like Mr. Olakris rightfully said, money is a big ingredient in the success of that. We have a saying in Nigeria, soup way sweet, na money kill 'em. So in order to make food that is delicious, you need money for that. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the people on the panel and also to get feedback from the other participants. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's good to make an acquaintance of you. We have 3 other guests. Only one of them, one of the other 2, 3, only one of them is in the house now. And it is an honor to welcome this great woman into the house, Mrs. Uche Cynthia Onwuka. Before she introduces herself, let me present her to you properly. Mrs. Uche Cynthia Onwuka holds a bachelor's degree in economics and statistics from the University of Benin, and also holds a master's degree in banking and finance from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She has garnered, wait for it, 27 years experience in the finance industry across various divisions and functions in merchant banks, commercial banks, and development finance institutions. These are the type of people that we need in this industry. Ms. Uche Onwuka has pioneered the creative industry department at Bank of Industry, Nigeria, and since still remains the group head of this division. She has supervised the development and successful implementation of the bank's first non-asset-based collateral arrangement for a major cinema project and other projects within the creative industry under her supervision. Now, prior to her role in the creative industry division, she has also held a supervisory role in the risk management division, overseeing 5 key departments: credit control, credit administration, monitoring, remedial, and recovery. Mrs. Onwuka had equally supervised the gender business and multilateral relationship department, where the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA, office was under her supervision. Mrs. Uche Onwuka has also worked in Money Bank PLC in the private banking and treasury department. As the head of Treasury Services Department, she was instrumental to the generation of funds for high net worth individuals, conglomerates, which enabled the bank meet its high liquidity demands required of a commercial bank. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mrs. Cynthia Onwuka. What a profile. Welcome, madam.
Thank you, my brother. I'm excited to be here today, and I look forward to enjoying all the deliberations we're going to enjoy today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The very powerful ones are very brief. Thank you, Madam Uche Cynthia Onwuka. We are pleased to have you here. Well, let's go to the conversation right away. Content and film industry in Africa, attracting investment into Africa's content and film industry. Wow. Let me start with you, Cassandra. Certainly the film industry on the African continent is gaining ground, and we are excited about that. As a person, Ms. Cassandra, how impressed are you on this development?
Well, I mean, considering the progress we've made, some 20 years ago, it would have been unheard of to have so many people interested in, funding films, so many countries interested in the African creative space, especially the film industry. So we've made quite a lot of progress. I'm very excited about it. I think it's, even though we're not, it's not yet uhuru, as we say, it's not yet perfect. There's a lot of progress that has been made. So I think it's definitely worth celebrating while we work harder for better.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Madam Onwuka, you have been on the field. You have put your money into film development on the continent in Nigeria. You have gone to location to visit the places where your money is. And we want to know, madam, there's been improvement all the same. And the African continent, the film industry is gaining ground. We see cultural transmutation and transportation from one region of the continent to another region of the continent. We see language barriers being broken in spite of the differences in languages. We see people understanding films from Kenya, film from Nigeria, film from Ghana, film from all over the place. How impressed are you as a person, especially someone who is investing in the film industry on the African continent?
Thank you again for the opportunity. Actually, I feel very excited about the steady and continuous growth in the film industry, especially in Nigeria and in Africa at large. I like the collaborations we've been seeing. I also have observed the professional and resilient nature of those in the industry. We've been able to move the industry from where we were in 2011 when I started this new function. It was strange, but now I could actually pick the continuous growth. It's been steady and very impressive. The growth in the industry has also been so interesting that it's been able to convert the doubts people had in their mind. It has also attracted people to start looking into the industry. We have more people interested, institutions, individuals interested in the industry now. The growth has also made more financial institutions to start looking at what you have in the industry. Government is also more interested in what is happening in the film industry, knowing the benefits we can derive from, at least from one production, the job creation, the message it sends out to the world, the visibility it gives to the continent. So many quantifiable and unquantifiable benefits that we can try to start recounting. I'm excited that the industry is growing and is growing at the right direction. Thank you.
Wow. I will still stay with you in Lagos before I move ahead, Madam Uka. 2011, wow. 2011, that's like 10 years ago. You did a pioneering job. Yeah. I know you would like to be modest about it, but it was not, it couldn't have been an easy task. Now, until very recently, Madam, we seem to have more individual sponsorship of content. What effrontery, how much boldness did you have to put into this? Because it generally appears like the African continent is not proactive about investment in creativity, especially on the film industry. But you led your institution into it. Were you not scared, Madam Uka? Were you not scared if it backfired? We would like to know your take on that.
Yeah, thanks. At least you've made it easier for me to also read. Now I'm actually excited. Now I'm happy. Initially from 2021, it was caring. I felt it was punishment by my then MD that moved me out of my comfort zone. An investment banker, managing the portfolio of the bank, treasury of Bank of Industry, and also the international operations, moved me in terms of redeployment to creative industry to start up a new area. So it was scary then, but now it's exciting to me. Yeah, it depends on the angle we are looking from. Yes, the businesses in the film industry is actually high risk business. That is the first fear you get. Ability to have very good mitigants will also help us to improve on this fear. Character of the producers and stakeholders in the industry was another fear, because some of the producers hadn't had any kind of relationship with financial institutions. Yes, they must have tried to borrow, but they were borrowing from friends and families. So the risk element was the first scaring angle that we tried to address.
Wow. Fear factor. Who will put $1 billion into an investment you're not sure of?
Yeah.
Especially if the producers or producing company does not have record of what they have done. Track record. Yeah. So that was a big one, Madam Uka. Thank you for the boldness to delve into this. And it looks like a woman's world after all. Women are bolder, women are more confronting to chart new paths, and we are grateful for that. While Madam Uka was speaking, Onke walked in to the house. I will introduce Onke briefly. Onke, I'm going to take you to the police station. It's been hard for me to get you. Very, very hard for me to get you.
I'm so sorry. You know, I didn't have the link. I went to the link from the poster, and then when I went on the website, it said it was in 7 hours. So I just didn't know what was kind of happening. But anyway, I was sent the link just now for the Zoom call. So I apologize for that.
Not a problem. Okay. Onke is at the National Film and Video Foundation. South Africa. Could you be kind enough, Onke, and introduce yourself to the house, please?
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Ola, for this incredible initiative, and to the extended team. My name is Onke Dumego. I work at the NFEF. I'm the Partnerships and Distribution Manager. Essentially, the National Film and Video Foundation, is an entity underneath the Department of Sports, Arts, and Culture in South Africa, and we basically focus on kind of uplifting the local film and TV industry through the funding initiatives that we provide. So we focus on filmmakers, documentary makers, and animators. So yeah, so that's essentially what the NFEF does. I started working at the organization on a full-time basis from January 2021.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Before you rest, let me take you back a little bit, Nyana. Cassandra and Lady Nwuka has dealt with those two questions. I want you to take a go at them. Certainly the film industry, okay, on the African continent is gaining ground. We see them here in Zanzibar, and we see how impressed many people are. Personally, okay, are you impressed about the development on the African continent of the film industry?
I am definitely impressed. I mean, I think that we've come a long way in terms of being interrupted, I think, for lack of a better term, as a continent. You know, there's some interesting statistics that show how, you know, from film industries, depending on how you define them, some of the first ones were in Africa. So, and the film houses were in countries like Egypt and all of that. But then with commercialization and all of these things, I guess Hollywood took center stage. But with regardless of that, globally, you have a Hollywood, you have a Bollywood in the East, and then you also have a Nollywood, right? When it comes to Nigeria and how they've really driven the production of film from that part of the continent. And they produce only second to Hollywood in terms of the volume when it comes to content and film, but literally at a fraction of the budget. So I just think we as a continent, and when it comes to South Africa, obviously we do not produce as much. However, we in terms of kind of global expansion and global exposure and all of those things, we have also made some very significant inroads. I would say particularly in the past 20 years, even though that has extended before in previous years. But I mean, as a viewer of content, I'm impressed because I've seen the growth throughout the years that I've been a viewer of content. I remember when I was younger and I used to watch television, everything was American. The majority of content was American, such that one would develop an American accent because the things you watched were Days of Our Lives and The Bold and the Beautiful. And, you know, apart from that, the local content you had was probably a couple of soapies here and there, and then also the news, right? But now it's developed so much since then, where there's a lot more appreciation, and from the main producers and broadcasters of that content, there's a lot more focus on investing on local content, and I guess that's twofold. Partly because I think, you know, content from other parts of the world has become a lot more expensive than what it was. And, you know, so it just serves the interests of your major broadcasters to invest a lot more in local content, and people are a lot more receptive to local content. And that's just, if you look at entertainment as a whole, it goes both ways. But when it comes to the actual content in terms of film and video and documentaries and all of that, it's really, from the broadcaster's perspective, from their investment, it's increased a considerable amount within the past 10 to 20 years. So I have definitely seen a growth. I do think that there is room for improvement. I mean, if I look at South Africa, I just mentioned Nollywood, Bollywood, and Hollywood. I mean, South Africa also has a considerable film industry that contributes about 63 billion to the GDP, which is like 1% of the GDP. So, and 1% of the GDP is actually, if you look at it relatively, it's a huge proportion. It makes a huge difference. But the challenge is that the perception is not, the perception doesn't actually, the perception from the powers that be, I don't think it matches the actual value that is produced. So I'm impressed, but I do know that there is huge improvement that needs to be made, because you know, the South African film industry is not exactly a wood of its own, you know, even though it has the merits to be one.
Awesome. Even though it has the merit to be one, we are progressing. Now, before you walked in, Mrs. Onwoka, she's one person that is taking the bulls by the horn in Nigeria. Okay, when you set your foot on Nigerian soil, that is one woman that you must meet. She's on top of the game, taking the risks, and now the risk seems to be paying off. In the powers that be, sponsoring projects, film projects.
Yeah.
Now, she had to brave the odds for what she believed in. She was put on the spot, under the spotlight, and she delivered. Now, my question to you, Onke, before I allow you to breathe, is until very recently, it would seem to have more individual sponsorship of content. Why does it generally appear like the African continent is not proactive about investment in creativity, especially of the film industry?
So I think that there's a number of ways in which you can look at it. I think that the main thing is a perception thing. So if you look at the government in America, right? In the federal government, when they are deciding on the budgets that the different ministers, I know they're called something different in America, but when they're just deciding on the budgets that are allocated to different departments, healthcare, education, all of those things, entertainment and the value of it is considered, right? Because they have an understanding of what Hollywood does for that economy. And they don't look at Hollywood in a myopic view. So they don't look at it and just say, okay, it's a bunch of people going to the movies, or it's celebrities, or it's a red carpet. No, they look at it and they understand that it has an impact on tourism, right? So when someone wants to go to LA, they definitely want to see the Hollywood sign. They want to see the stars and, you know, walk on the Hollywood Boulevard and all of those things. They understand the fact that it affects employment. So if you go to Los Angeles, any restaurant you go to, most of the people that are serving you there are people that are waiting for a callback, that have gone and applied for, that have gone and auditioned. They understand that it affects other points of investment that the government knows are crucial towards the growth and development of the American people, right? So, I mean, while we can say America is a different ball game and it's had different years of it's set up in a different way, and they created the model. If you want to make such a controversial statement, which I don't necessarily believe, but anyway, at the end of the day, from the powers that be, they have the right perception as to why film is important, and they know how much it impacts other industries. Whereas when it comes to the African continent, and I do think it could be different depending on which countries you are referring to, but I think our challenge here is that we do not, the perception from the powers that be is not what it should be, right? So as much as a Nollywood can produce that much content, the fact that it does it at a fraction of the budget tells you everything, right? So from a private sector investment perspective, even in South Africa, a filmmaker, to kind of get a film to the level at which it wants to get it at, whether it comes to production quality and can it be submitted for an Academy Award, all of those things, they have to pull in funding from so many different sources, because the reason to believe from investors is a harder sell. So I think up until a point where the powers that be, in other words, from a private sector, even from government, and I say that with the understanding of where the NFVF plays and our role and how much we are crucial towards the industry, but from the powers that be and the ones that have the power to invest, the perception of film has to change, and people have to understand the importance that filmmakers and all the practitioners within the entire ecosystem play. So if you look at lockdown, if we look at new media alone, when it came to lockdown, the health workers were definitely the frontline workers. But in South Africa, we saw a huge uproar from local artists and practitioners and performing artists, because they kind of said, look, you guys are all locked down and stressed, and your mental health is affected because your life has changed and your life will never be the same again for the foreseeable future. But while you have been locked down and stressed and affected by all of this, you've been entertained by the content that we've provided. You've been entertained by our skill. You've been entertained by our industry. So while you may not value it, now you see the value in it because of how much of a crucial role it's played just towards your mental health, right? Which has taken a huge degree of importance now during the lockdown period and because of the pandemic. So in essence, and in a way, the artists and performing artists in film and TV and all of the kind of adjacent industries when it comes to entertainment, they, to a certain extent, have also been in their own right. They've also been frontline workers. They've also really come to the fore and really helped society kind of deal with the pandemic, when a lot of kind of brands and governments needed to communicate, needed to send message and communication about how one can remain safe and all of that. They used artists, right? So art is very closely related to how we relate as one another, as human beings. It's related to the human experience. And without art, you really do not have something called culture. So it plays such an critical role towards so many factors of society but because it plays such a crucial role and it's so central and so fundamental, sometimes you overlook that, right? And that's been overlooked historically. It's been brought to the fore now with the pandemic, but I guess it's up to us to really make the decisions that need to be made, and it's also up to the private sector to really see the value in it. So I think it's really, just to sum up what I'm saying, I think it's really a matter of perceptions that need to be shifted radically. And I think that the pandemic has brought the plight of filmmakers and performing artists as a whole to the forefront. And I don't think that is anything that is going to change anytime soon. So I mean, I certainly think that is one of the challenges. And I think I don't know if it's a matter of being not being proactive. I think there's a huge educational element that needs to be taken into consideration, just to dismantle those perceptions. And I think that so I mean, essentially, I think that's what we need to get to. We need to get to a point where we are willing to have the conversations and to educate one another about how crucial the film industry is towards any economy, and how it can impact any economy: tourism, education, healthcare. I mean, I've mentioned those three, and I've mentioned healthcare when it comes to mental health, right? So it just is a perception value reframing that needs to happen. And I think the pandemic was a huge invitation for that. And the African countries and the private sectors within those African countries that take that invitation up are the ones that are more likely than the others to succeed when it comes to this content game in the future. There's a huge content currency that COVID-19 unveiled. And if the private sector industries on the African continent don't wake up to it, the ones from abroad will, right? So your filmmakers might also kind of lose the creative license to kind of create the content that they want that speaks to their realities, because the money might be coming from those who, are not necessarily from the continent. So it's a value reframing exercise that I think needs to happen.
Thank you for that. Let's go to Lagos. So radicalism, we have to refine and reevaluate the values, and we can begin to attempt these things. Thank you so much, Onke. I will go to Cassandra, and then Lady Nwuka will put some pressure on this question. Cassandra, anything will sell in Africa, anything, because we have the population, right? African film venture is rising for obvious reasons. One is the increased talent showcase. And I tell you, there is talent on the continent of Africa. Sure, there is talent. Talent from Nigeria to Ghana to Kenya to South Africa to the north of Africa. Munia is here from, she was born in Casablanca. She lives in France now. She still represents the continent. There is immense talent, right? So the talent, the increase in talent show, and then there's another, the population explosion. Nothing is going to stop Africans from getting more children. We will get more children. No contraceptives will stop us from getting more children. So we are the future of business. We are the future of selling anything. Now the question is, what are the ways to improve the commercial worth of the industry? I'm asking you, Cassandra, before I go to Lady Nwuka, because Lady Nwuka will not put her money into just anything. Cassandra, what are the ways to improve the commercial worth of the industry to attract people like Lady Nwuka and people like Onwuke and the organizations that they represent? Cassandra, go for it from Lagos.
Okay, thank you. Sorry I was absent for a bit. My internet connection went off. So I think first of all, obviously we need skills. We need more training, technical training for the crew, whether it's directing, whether it's writing, all aspects of film production. We definitely need more training because when you improve your craft, you make better work. When you make better work, you attract more high-profile investors. Then secondly, I think it's also to understand the marketing of our content. If there's one thing the US or Europe, let's focus on the US. If there's one thing they've done really right, it's packaging and marketing their content. Most of us were enamored with America and Hollywood before we even met any Americans. Hello?
Yes, you're on. We can hear you, Cassandra.
So most of us were enamored with Hollywood before we even left the continent, before we left the country. And it's because of the way those films were packaged. So in addition to improving our skills, filmmaking skills, I think we also need to know how to package our films. The difference between plantain chips and the local kwekere is the way it's packaged. So I think that we really need to learn how to package our films in the sense of how we present it to the world, how we market it using the various tools that are available. Then thirdly, I think we also need to, what I like to call, demystify African content. As it is, and for the longest time, it's improving now, but for the longest time, African content has been seen as an exotic other. It's not normal. Hollywood is normal for us. Hollywood is the default for us. African films, even for Africans, it's considered an exotic order, it's acquired taste. Oh, I'm not really into Nollywood films. Oh, I'm not really. You hear people say that. And so, in order to demystify that, we need to be more present in international events about movies. So, festivals, film conferences, film markets. There needs to be a concerted effort and a deliberate effort by our filmmakers, of course, sponsored by the government and also sponsored by private patrons to attend these events, to be present there, because the more people see African content, the more people consume African content, the more appealing it is. It's that law of in psychology. If you show, it's like when you play music, you play a certain type of music on radio. After a while, even if you don't like the music, you find yourself humming the sound, right? You start humming the music. Before you know it, you're singing the music subconsciously. So that's what Hollywood has done with their films. There's been even now we have Bollywood that has done it too. So in every major film event, you have a stand dedicated to Bollywood. A couple of years ago, Cannes dedicated what do you call it, edition to Bollywood when they celebrated, I think it was 100 years. So there's a concerted effort. The Korean film industry, they've also done that. So we need to be out there in people's faces, so we don't look like like an afterthought. There needs to be a deliberate effort to be out there in people's faces, attend those festivals, package your films well, learn more about your craft, improve your craft. And I think when we do all that, it doesn't become strange to ask an investor, regardless of his nationality, to come and invest in African films. We have Arabs who invest in Nollywood films. We have Chinese people who invest in Nollywood films. We have the French who invest in other European films. So, and it's because those films are normal. They are not an afterthought. They're not an exotic order. So we need to demystify our content, make it more attractive by skill improvement, getting out there in festivals and conferences, and of course, packaging it well. Voila.
Let me still stay in Lagos. Madam Onwuka, please help us jump into this. You have eyes for investment opportunities in all strata of society, and now you have a special eye for film production. Now we want to impress you. We want to impress you. We in the film movie industry. What should content do to increase their commercial worth? How can producers impress you to get money from you to invest in their films? Madam Uwuka, what can they do? What can they do to increase their commercial worth?
Thanks indeed. Cassandra actually dwelt on the points. I was actually happy and enjoying all the points she enumerated. So to reiterate on one of the facts, I'll look at continuous improvement on the skills we already have. Self-development should also continue. We'll have to try as much as possible to continue to improve on what we are doing presently so that we can compete in the global market. We're not just producing for Nigeria or for Africa. We should have it in mind that our content will be seen in the world and that the content from Africa will be placed side by side with other content. So continuous improvement. I will also look at the decision by the producers to produce quality films that cannot be faulted. It is good to start, present good budget, pitch rightly. We'll find out that most of the times when they get to location, they start cutting corners. So if you resolve that you're going to have a level of quality, that should be maintained from beginning to the end. Another one that is also important, based on the experience we've gathered by visiting other continents, we have a lot of skilled Africans living outside Africa. I will use Nigeria as an example. When we got to Canada and visited most of the big studios, while we were trying to support local studios and to see how we could fill the gaps, especially in the area of quality of the films produced, we found out that most of our younger ones are the ones supporting major projects outside this country. So how can we bring them back? How can we collaborate with them? It's a global market. How can they be there and we bring them in to be part of what we are doing so that they transfer knowledge also to the locals? How do we collaborate with our skilled professionals living in the diaspora? Then I'll look at better collaborations. I don't want producers to work alone. In fact, I'm working on a special product paper to support funding. I'll just give a little side of that package. We should work together. Producers should not handle the content alone from beginning to the end. Before you go to location or before you look for funding, I want to see producers working with the distribution companies because they understand also what the market wants. I want collaboration also with the studios so that from the one, you have a strong team looking at the market, looking at the quality of the film, and looking at the storyline. Collaboration within the ecosystem is very, very important.
Wow. This is profound. I enjoyed the part of layering Africa diaspora to come back to the continent and make things happen here. In South Africa here, we can say we seem to be losing some of our people to the United States of America, to Hollywood already. You know, our sisterhood started in coming to America too. You know, the Wakanda story, major South African actors and actresses featured in it. Our Trevor Noah has left the continent. We only see him visit us and his grandmother once in a while. And we seem to have a lot of resource creatives out there in the diaspora. And that is a very good, important point to lure them back to the continent rather than building other people's business, come back to invest on the continent. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Let's go to Johannesburg now. Okay, insurance matters. Insurance matters. You want to put your money where you know the risks are minimal or non-existent at all. And the film industry appears to carry risks. If a movie is supposed to be shot in 9 months, it could protract to 2 years or even more. Pre-production, production, post-production, and money is tied down. How about insurance matters, Onke? What do you think? How can insurance policies help to sustain content producers on the continent?
Thank you so much. Sorry, I was trying to unblock my video. So I think the insurance one is quite interesting. And you know, I think I think there's been a huge kind of focus on insurance around the world with if you look at different industries as a whole. So I think when the pandemic began, I think Wimbledon was the only, or one of the few, but it's the only one I read of, company that had pandemic insurance. So they were able to their pandemic insurance was something to the tune of 18 million, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, they were fine, even though they had to postpone and reconfigure their model and how their business works, they were fine because they had prepared for it. But I mean, I think the majority of companies hadn't. And I think the point that I'm trying to make, and insurance companies that offered insurance didn't have the vehicle in there, right? So I think it's possibly an initiative that either funding providers alongside private sector, together with in terms of partnerships, that we have to, I think it's something that we have to kind of steer ourselves, because we have to essentially build an understanding of the proper process and the realistic process that comes into play when it comes to filmmaking, especially when it comes to filmmaking in regions of the world where, you know, you have bricks and mortar issues, or you have challenges when it comes to location and arriving at locations, and all of these kind of risks that go into that go into that. So films that are produced in some of our villages or some of our areas in South Africa where you have infrastructure that's not necessarily in place, but the location is absolutely crucial to the telling of the story. So if it's done, for instance, via an advertising route, right? So let's say the production is a commercial, right? Then it's much easier then to protect the production from an insurance perspective, because it falls under the wing of the advertising of the advertising insurance policy. So that's why I'm bringing up that's why I'm bringing up the need for private sector, I guess, together with funding partners, to create the type of partnerships that enable normal filmmakers who are not necessarily making commercials, because we all know that commercial industry is, at least in South Africa, it's not as diverse as it should be, right? We don't have enough companies producing black production companies producing commercials, unless, you know, they kind of siphon through a typically white-owned agency. But the private sector partnerships with them, together with funders such as ourselves, the NFEF or the NEF or any of those other types of funders, those things are absolutely crucial for your filmmakers that are not necessarily creating commercials, so that there is a fair kind of insurance practice that exists, a fair insurance practice that enables filmmakers to create films at peace, right, with a peace of mind. Because I do necessarily think, and it's interesting that you said help sustain the content, because, you know, one thing goes wrong and it can kind of shut down an entire production. So, I mean, that's my view on it, is that it's really on us to create the types of partnerships that will incubate, essentially, because that's what insurance does. They will incubate the filmmakers that we fund, such that they know that when they pursue these films that they create, that there is that incubation that helps them kind of film them with the peace of mind, with the knowledge that there is a normal insurance provider there that understands the process, that understands how long also the terms of insurance need to occur, that they don't need to occur only for the production value of or the production and development value of the production, but it has to extend beyond that. We tend to look at type of the films and content that filmmakers produce only when it comes to production and development, and we tend to ignore the things of marketing and distribution, that there's a cost to that, right? So, and that there's risks attached to that as well. So those risks would also need to be kind of calculated into the cost of insurance. So it's the full spectrum of the full making process that would have to be included.
Thank you. Let me go back to Lagos. Thank you so much, Onke, for that. Oh, so much. We have a few questions here, but I will ask the questions for the panelists towards the end of the whole session, in case some of the questions are attempted as we go on. Let me go to Madam Cynthia, still on insurance. I know you invest, you take risks, but I also think that you normally would look back and be sure that there are backups for whatever investment you put your money in. Talk to us about insurance.
Yeah, thank you very much. For the studio funding, yes, we've been able to have a partnership around ensuring the items funded by the bank. But however, for content production, no insurance company in Nigeria has been able to provide insurance cover.
Wow.
For content production. So what we've tried to do, and we're also trying to do, is to continue to engage with the insurance companies to see how we can partner with them. We've been looking at building special products around content production within the bank, and also for any insurance company that will be willing to partner with us. So ensuring content in Nigeria is not something we've done. We're still engaging, and it's an ongoing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Madam Cynthia. I won't leave you yet. I know government can't do everything. It is too much. It is an overkill for government to do everything anywhere in the world, because governments are never meant to do everything. They are to create an enabling environment for the people to flourish. So I want you to talk to the issue of private sector funding. Madam, how can private sector be more involved in film funding, or how can they be encouraged to be involved in film funding? Because we know that because of the type of capacity that you sit on, you have interface with private sector more, because you build the industry, you are in charge of industry of everything in Nigeria, for example. How can private sector be more involved in film funding? For example, you are the bank of industry, you are getting yourself into it, but you can't do it alone, and you have many resource private sector practitioners that you have relationship with. How can you get them involved in this? Is there a hope in that regard? Madam, please speak to that.
Yes, thank you very much. There's hope, and we're beginning to see private investors invest in content production. We have to actually start working on the figures. How can the return on investment be attractive? That is very important. And for us to make return on investment attractive, we need to work on the quality of films, the quality of content, not just film alone, looking at other content. How do we improve on our content so that the return on investment will be very attractive? Private investors are commercial business entrepreneurs, so they are interested in the figures. Once the figures are attractive, they will be ready to invest. So how do we work on the quality? How can we have more professionals in the industry with outstanding character, knowing that character is an important aspect of the 5 C's of lending? If we are able to improve on this and show verifiable figures, I'm certain that more private investors will be attracted in the industry. Like I noted initially, we are beginning to see private investors investing in different films. We're beginning to see collaborations. We're beginning to see people coming together to work on content. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. So there's hope. Let me go to Johannesburg. Lady Onke, I'm coming to you, Johannesburg. Now, this one is about the future now. As we begin to come to the end of this webinar, let's talk to the future. Onke, please help us. You personally, in your capacity, how do you see the future of financing for African creative sector? Because as it stands now, the ball is in our court. It has started already. We can't afford to stop. We can't afford to drop the ball. How do you see the future of financing on the African continent? Now, let me put a proviso there, okay? We see that maintaining what has been achieved is one of the dilemma or problematic issues on the continent. Maintaining things, maintaining processes, maintaining successes, and improving on successes. Now we see now Mzansi, Magic, and all of the film industry in South Africa, for example, is blossoming too. On the continent, is blossoming. These are good news. How long, Onke, can we sustain this on the continent? Please speak to that.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just trying to lower my hand. Okay, so I think we can sustain it to. I mean that determines how we want to play the game, right? How we want to play the game of sustainability. If I'm not mistaken, there's a Nigerian proverb that says, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together." Right? So I think we need to take that wisdom and use it because it matters. As a continent, generally speaking, we have been delayed by, for 200 plus years of all of the things that have happened in the continent, as I say things. But it's the truth. So the thing is, it's not going to happen if we work in silos. It's not going to happen if we work myopically, right? So partnerships are absolutely key when it comes to that. And I'm not just saying that because partnership manager, but what I mean by that is we've got to be very strategic in our approach. And the partnerships have to include absolutely everything, right? So they have to be cognizant of the needs of production and development. They have to be cognizant of the needs of marketing. They have to be cognizant of the needs of distribution. They also have to be cognizant of the needs of training and development, because that's how you usher in the next generation of filmmakers, right? It can't just be something that sits with the people who are active in the industry currently. Currently now, if you go to a film school in South Africa, you pay way more than you would at some of the top universities. So you have so many kids who have the potential to enter the industry who are blocked out of it, right? So the partnerships are absolutely key because they help from a macroeconomic level, if you look at the industry from a macro perspective. But then they also help in terms of just, if it's an individual filmmaker on a one-on-one basis trying to put a film together, there are some filmmakers that have had huge success by just working with their partnerships in a very smart ways. For instance, Knuckle City, which was a film that was produced in South Africa. It was South Africa's official submission for the Academy Awards. But for instance, they got funding from the NFVF, they got funding from the NEF, they got funding from the economic development agencies. So they looked at different tiers, they looked at different kind of elements of where they could get funding. On top of that, right, to produce the format, and the funding does not necessarily look at everything. Obviously, it's split into the different divisions of whatever the film is. On top of that, one could look at if the funds are exhausted, that the funds have been, the funds sourced have been exhausted. There are partnerships that exist for things like locations, right? So when locations are charging you an arm and a leg, there are film commissions in South Africa, Gauteng Film Commission, Durban Film Commission. They're film commissions whose mandate it is to ensure that they fund filmmakers such that they can film in whatever location they want to film at, right? They are barter, they are trade exchanges. If you know, filmmakers could perceive and look at their films as an opportunity for advertising for certain products. So if there is a cell phone used in the film, if a visual of communication and a cell phone is used quite extensively, then the partnerships need to extend to a Samsung or an Apple iPhone or whatever the case is, right? And that brings in another revenue stream. So partnerships are absolutely key from an individual filmmaker's perspective, and then also just at a macro level. And the partnerships, obviously has to exist within a particular industry, but also across different industries. So for instance, with the NFEF, we've had quite a number of partnerships with certain countries across the continent. There's just one I wanted to mention here. I just didn't want to get it incorrect. So I mean, we've had quite a number. For instance, we have a training initiative for students in Zanzibar. We've partnered with the Namibian Film Commission. So you also have to look at the partnerships outside of your industry, just to understand just to ensure, because the growth of your industry, especially on the African continent, it cannot happen alone. It cannot happen in isolation. It also undervalues and underestimates, it just slows down the whole process, because there are strengths that other film industries have that South Africa doesn't have, and that we have to acknowledge and accept. And you partner based on the strengths that you have, right? So I think partnerships are absolutely key, and the word partnerships is key because partnerships does not necessarily imply an exchange of money, especially when there isn't necessarily money. Sometimes the exchange is services, sometimes it's goods. And if you are, for instance, an individual filmmaker and you are in desperate need of certain props or whatever the case may be to bring your film to life, you will not opt out for something just because it's a product and a service and it's not necessarily cash on hand. Even though the cash on hand ones are absolutely as important, the word partnerships really covers everything that it could possibly be, right? And then also in terms of the future, I think from a training and development and education perspective, it was mentioned earlier in the conversation where the packaging of films, especially from African filmmakers, has to be, well, not has to be revisited, but there's a huge opportunity to just look at it in a different way. So we might have a lot of filmmakers that say, okay, but why wasn't I funded for this? But the idea is so great. But the content, look at the content, look at the content. The idea is so great. The thing is, at the end of the day, as a filmmaker, if you do not approach your work as a business, it affects the longevity of it, whether you like to admit it or not. So even if you tell yourself, I'm a creative, I'm not good at the business side. Business in itself, entrepreneurship is a creative thing. So just because you are creative, it does not mean that you do not have the capacity to understand. There are people who are entrepreneurs that do business with mining or do business with manufacturing. Trust me, there's a lot of creative dealing with business that happens in industries that have nothing to do with films, with filmmaking. There's a lot of creative thinking that has to happen to keep businesses afloat, especially because of COVID. So to say that I'm a creative and I'm not a business person, it's just not, it's not it anymore. There's such an opportunity for creatives to really take a hold and take control of the full value chain of the content that they produce. You toil and you work so hard to create beautiful content. You might as well reap the commercial benefits of it and not have a distributor or the marketing agency kind of reap most of the rewards than what you do, just because they understand the negotiation language across the table, right? So for filmmakers as well, the content producers, the longevity of this industry also depends on them approaching a funding process or approaching the building of their films from the backwards, right? So usually you'll start with the content, with the idea, sometimes and that's a fair process to make, to just understand the type of film you're trying to make. But making sure you pin down and you bed down the type of distribution you're aiming for, be it a platform, be it a region, and then the type of marketing and PR that is going to be involved that you're going to need in order to make that distribution a success. Working from the backwards to the front is not necessarily a process that has done anyone harm. And there are a lot of international film producers that do exactly that. And sometimes, you don't always have to be the one who sits with the idea. There's absolutely nothing wrong with approaching the private sector and saying, look, I see how you you create this content in this way for your organization. How about you capture it in the form of a film? How about you capture it in the form of a documentary? How about you capture it in the form of an animation? Now that digital has really taken a forefront. So there's also nothing wrong with approaching it in that way, so that when it comes to things like marketing, when it comes to things like distribution, because it's private sector funded, that is not necessarily something that has to weigh too heavily on your head, but you are still in the commercial conversation because you bridged it as that, and then the content will follow. So there's nothing wrong with approaching the conversation that way or approaching the business in that way, as long as filmmaking is approached as a business that the creative takes full responsibility for. Because you take full creative responsibility for it as a business, you reap full responsibility, you reap the rewards of it as well. And in terms of getting funding and applying for it and securing it, that is also something that plays a huge part in us determining as to whether or not to fund the project. Because being a filmmaker, taking things in like account, it gives the funder so much more peace of mind to understand and see that, okay, this film is sellable, this film is relatable in different markets, this film is worth the energy. We can see that these funds are not necessarily going to go into a bottomless pit, that we're working with a filmmaker who understands the necessity of this project to come to an end and the necessity of it to be distributed as far and wide as it possibly can. So I think from a filmmaker perspective, I think that's what I would say impacts the longevity is the approach of the approach of filmmaking, is that it really has to be a lot more of an entrepreneurial business approach. And then secondly, also just the approach of industry bodies, of the private sector, of governmental bodies in being deliberate in the fact that they partner. We just announced on the 1st of April our partnership with Netflix, right, with 28 million for 6 micro budget feature films that we released a call on. We also have a TikTok partnership where it's essentially an incubation hub for content creators so that they can learn how to monetize their content. So during lockdown, oh, he's gone.
We're listening.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so during lockdown, TikTok viewers surged up, and I mentioned TikTok because it's a new type of content. Yes, you have your traditional type of filmmaking, but then there is the new type of filmmaking, relatively new, the video on demand. And then just when it comes to content, if you look at it really rather expansively, that type of content is involved in the conversation. That's why we have a partnership with TikTok, because we recognize that content as content. And the idea there is really to help these TikTokers, some of whom are the top TikTokers in the world, right, from South Africa, to help them monetize their platforms, right? So this idea of really approaching film and content as a business is absolutely key in making sure that it's sustainable, but the responsibility is on us as funders, as private sector as well, partnering together. The responsibility is also on filmmakers in their approach towards that, because it will make, first of all, your approval for funding much easier. Secondly, it will make, it will just also make it a much more rewards-based experience for you as a filmmaker, as opposed to, distributors and running away with most of the money just because you don't know the negotiation power and rights that you have when it comes to that part of the conversation.
Thank you so much. Okay, very elaborate. Let me go to Lagos, to Madam Uka of the Bank of Industry. Madam, with all modesty, by the time you're 80 years old or 90, you will look back and be grateful, and there will be many people that will be grateful for what you have done for them, starting them up in their projects in the film industry, pioneering what BOI is doing. While you sit at 80, at 90, a happy retired woman, please, how do you see the future of financing for the African creative sector? We're talking from 2021 till that time after you will have retired and sat down. How do you see the future? Will there be continuity? Will there be maintenance of this pioneering that you have done now? You must have seen something in it. Is there continuity? Do you see a future in this? Knowing fully well that we haven't had a good track record of maintaining successes on the continent, sorry to say. Please speak to this, madam. It's very important.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I see a very bright future. And I see a continuous growth, just like we mentioned at the beginning. We're already on the right track, and it's so encouraging. When you're doing the right thing and it's growing, what you see is that you attract other interested individuals in what you're doing. So what I see is a very bright future, a growing and steady and encouraging one. We'll also continue to experience increase of financial institutions' participation. So many institutions in the financial industry are interested in funding projects in the creative industry, especially film production. So I see more funding opportunities, more funding windows, and this will attract increased participation in the industry. I also see better structure in terms of the contributions and positioning of the producers. I could see better collaborations if we continue to push with the ideas we have now about collaboration, partnership with within the ecosystem. I can see us building stronger force, whereby any producer or any production can get the kind of funding they need to drive the production from point A to point Z. Diversified products and productions will be experienced in the industry. We are beginning to support animation and other types of content, and this will continue to grow. Interestingly, Africa has huge number of creative minds. These minds are coming out strongly. They're trying to build the ideas they have there. And the increase in the support from financial providers and governments will continue to drive the interests we have there. So I see a better future going forward, and this future will be sustained, it will grow, and it will be very interesting, as it will create a lot of jobs and also diversify all we're doing or all we've done. When we started in Bank of Industry, we looked at the low-hanging fruits after the mapping of the industry. From the mapping of the industry, we found out that within the creative industry ecosystem, we could fund about 18 segments. But what we did was to start with the first three, which is content production, distribution, in terms of physical distribution, cinema, and online distribution. Then we looked at studio. It was from the study tour we found out that we needed to bridge the gap in the quality of films we produce. We needed to empower our studio entrepreneurs to acquire modern equipment and also to work on the skill we had internally. interestingly, we found out that all the studios we visited outside the country, there was no studio we did not see up to 3 or 4 Nigerians. And they were not there just occupying any position. They were contributing effectively to the content, to the projects they had. So we tried to fill the gap. I can see our studios doing better since we have the skill. We also went into content production. We started with the first major film, Half of a Yellow Sun. If you know about the budget, that was huge. So you could see that we have Nigerians that can actually work on real high budget content. And if we're able to structure it in terms of partnership within the ecosystem, the industry will continue to move in the right direction. We looked at the physical distribution outlets, the cinema. We started with the first project, which was not collateralized, but we saw the determination and the business plan of the promoters of this business. 2 young people and their team members. Today, Film One is not just a leading brand in Nigeria. They've been able to diversify. Today, Genesis Deluxe Cinema has been able to grow to great numbers of over 10 outlets and even investing outside the country. So this growth will continue. We've been able to, as a bank, move from just 3 low-hanging fruits within the mapped out segments. We've grown up to 12, 13. And we're looking at having investment in all the mapped out 18 segments. So if the bank is prepared to fund quality projects in this industry, and we continue to receive quality projects from the entrepreneurs in the industry, I think the future is very bright and the future will be very encouraging. Thank you very much.
Well, that's it. That's Prophetess Cynthia Onwuka. The prophetess has spoken, and beautiful. Thank you. There's a message here, a question here. Let me start attending to the questions. I'm glad that Onke is here and Lady Onwuka is here. And I'm glad both of you are having a conversation and meeting with us here and talking to Africa and diaspora. The question goes, and Onke, you will give it a shot, and then Lady Onwuka will continue on it. I have directed 2 movies here in South Africa, 2 Nollywood movies here in South Africa. When they were bringing in the movies, they said they wanted a South African-based Nigerian director who could undo the film because of the Nigerian nuances in the script. Okay, and someone suggested me, and we did the production. After then, a lot of movies have come into Mzansi, have come into South Africa to be shot here, either in full or in part. And we know that there are collaborations. Even Hollywood goes around the world to shoot their films in Paris, Casablanca, in Lagos, in Johannesburg, in Cape Town. Now, the question goes to the issue of collaboration. There are 2 major players on the continent, Nigeria and South Africa, and we cannot overlook the relationship of these 2 mothers, South Africa and Nigeria. These 2 mothers, they hold the progress of Africa in their hands. And what collaboration needs to happen? That's the question now, between government agencies in the creative space in Africa. And the B part is especially between Nigeria and South Africa. Onke is doing well. Onke knows some Nigerian proverbs already. We will arrange how to Nigerianize her. Lady Cynthia will do that when she lands in Lagos.
I mean, I am in need.
Yes, Onke, you said what?
No, I'm in need of being Nigeriaized. How?
Look
And I
at
also
that.
Nigeriaized. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, I used to live. Can I tell you? We used to live in Berea, and right next to Berea is a place called Yeovil,
Yeah.
and we used to go there all the time. Me and my sisters, and we used to go there, and they were just. I mean, it's become an African melting pot. Like if you know Yeovil, you know it's an African melting pot. So different foods from places around the continent, your cassavas, your all of that. I'm not bad, but I need to be properly Nigeriaized. But cassava and me, we are here. We are here. We are very
Lady
good friends.
Cynthia, are you listening? That's your sister there.
Yeah, she must. Yeah, my sister is. I live with my sister. Oh, she is obsessed with Africa Magic. So she's very happy that multi-choice, because it used to be one channel, but now I think there's like 3. So yeah, so trust me, I'm not as good as I should be, but I'm not bad, Shem. I'm not bad.
That's very good. That's very good to hear.
Just prepare yourself for a good time in Lagos. You will land in Madam Cynthia's. I can promise you that already. Yeah,
Yes,
Madam.
Right?
You're right. You're right.
Let me tell you, I have a Nigerian friend who told me my name in, I don't know what language it is from Nigeria, because I know they're different dialects. But she said Onke, if it's got an inflection with an E with a line on top of it, means comfort or something. I don't know. Maybe but I don't know. That's what she said to me. I just believed her. So I'm not bad. Yeah, sort of, kind of, maybe. Yeah.
This is good. I love this.
Yeah.
So speak to the collaboration issue, okay? When last were you in Lagos, by the way? Let me put you on
I've never been. Imagine. I've never been. How bad? I am not lying. I wish I was. But I know that traffic is hectic there. I know in South Africa, if you do a media, you don't pay them. They just come there. You must pay them because they sit for 4 hours in traffic. So, I mean, yeah, I've never been. I know, but anyway, hopefully doors will open and I'll be able to go. But I mean, in terms of the question that was asked, as the NFF, we currently have a co-production treaty. And so that treaty exists between South Africa, and then we focus on Algeria, Nigeria, and Kenya. So it's currently in the draft phases, but it's a co-production treaty. So I mean, essentially, it's collaborative in nature, right? So the person who asked the question was absolutely right in the sense that you cannot underestimate the connection of the countries, and we've tried to really make sure that we don't just give that lip service, that we actually say something. So unfortunately, right now it's still in draft phase, but it is a co-production treaty that we are creating, such that the funding that we pool, we're going to focus on Algeria, Nigeria, and Kenya, so that a filmmaker will be able to use resources from all of those countries. So that's currently what we are doing that I can speak to, instead of just giving lip service to something. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. It really does. Thank you so much. Cynthia, no. Cassandra, can you hear me, Cassandra?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Okay, please speak to the future of financing for African creative, and then I will go to Lady Cynthia to share some success stories on her labs. Yes, please.
Okay.
Cassandra,
So,
please go for it. What do you see
for
in the
the
future?
future for me, I see distribution as becoming even more important than it is, because if you improve your skills, make good films, do all the good things you need to do the partnerships, as Onked has talked about, improved everything. if you don't have distribution, then people don't get to see your film. And ACOMAT that's one of the reasons why we're very passionate about distribution, because that's the one thing that has been the missing link, especially maybe not for South Africa, because I find South Africa, for the most part, they have a more structured distribution system, more so than, Western Africa, whether it's Nollywood or Ghana, or even, East Africa. So distribution is I see distribution as taking an even more important place than it does now. I see a situation where even before filmmakers go into production, they consult with distribution companies. Madam Cynthia had talked about that, consulting with distribution companies, partnering with distribution countries, because distribution companies understand the market. They understand if you're making a movie about so and so, what kind of markets or what type of platforms will be most likely to acquire said content. And for us at Africa Content Marketplace, we see that as very important. It's a vision, a global vision, to see more African films distributed around the world, distributed globally. It's our dream to also see people understand that distribution is not the enemy, because a lot of times there's that almost demonizing of distribution. But the truth is, when you walk hand in hand with your distribution, you get better coverage for your film and you get a better return on investment. It also helps you get your content in different languages so that you can put it on different markets, right? It helps you also get into different territories and all of that. So distribution, I see it as a major, major, major turning point. Also with digital platforms. I think there's one thing that the pandemic has taught us, is that nothing remains the same. Everything changes, everything evolved, including cinema. The cinema houses are not going anywhere, but there's going to be even more importance placed on digital platforms. Our Afro Cinema platform on ACOMAT is, for us, that's one of the key things that our CEO really, really put in mind when building it, because everybody might not be able to go out to the cinemas. And even if everybody could, every film will not make it to the cinemas. And even if every film could make it to the cinemas, right, in terms of content, you're not going to have enough cinemas to cater to the amount of films that are coming out of the industry. In Nigeria is the second largest producer of films in terms of quantity. You don't have enough cinemas to cater for all those content. And even if we had enough cinemas in Nigeria, no producer wants to limit themselves to just one territory. So I see digital cinema taking on an even important place in the distribution space, because it allows you to have a more global outreach. It allows you to reach to people in the African diaspora, people of the Afro descendants, that you find in the Pacific, in Amazon, Brazil, even in Afro-Asiatic countries like in Papua New Guinea and the rest of them. So I see digital distribution expanding the reach of our content. So it's not just, if you're in a country, if you're in South Africa, you watch South African films. If you're in Nigeria, you watch Nigerian films. Also, if you're all the way in Australia, in New Zealand, in, Samoan Islands, you can also have access to our content because of the evolution of digital distribution. So that's where I really see the future. Distribution is going to be key. The mode of distribution is going to evolve beyond physical space and into the digital space. Internet is going to be definitely more affordable in African countries, more widespread, and so more people will be inclined to watch their content digitally. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Before you go, Lady Cassandra, before you go, please speak to this. You represent ACOMAT, and I'm aware that your company started with personal funds, no funding from anywhere. What was the motivation? And the whole project was conceptualized before the lockdown, even before the pandemic. What were you thinking about in the company? What were you projecting? What came to your mind looking forward? It wasn't pandemic time. Nobody was thinking so deeply on that on the continent, yet you put yourselves together and you made this thing work. You ventured into this online thing. What motivated you? Well, what was the push?
I think that's one of the advantages of having a visionary leader that saw beyond what already was. They always say that if if you have to wait till you're ready, or if you have to wait till a situation is perfect, you're already late, you're already obsolete. So there was a vision, like I said, to really give African film that prestige that it needed. And you can't give something prestige if people don't necessarily know what it is about and where to consume it. I'm not talking about making something commonplace, but I'm talking about making it accessible to people who want to consume it. A lot of times I mean, you have other platforms and all, but what usually happens with African content is that it gets lost in the mist. Because like I said earlier on, our content is still seen as an exotic order. It's an afterthought. You have platforms that they have a budget for other types of content. Then maybe towards the end of the year, they have little amount. I mean, they're like, let's just buy African content. Did you get? So we had a leader that wanted to go beyond that, that really wanted to make African content. And when I say African content, I mean content from the continent and content from the diaspora. So it's a very umbrella term I'm using here as African content. So he wanted it to go beyond, let's just go and buy it as a last resort. He wanted to put African content in the spotlight. He wanted to make us the main event. And so that's really the vision of Africa. And as God would have it, I don't think God caused the pandemic, but he allowed certain things to happen to reset. But as we saw, the pandemic came in and sort of sped up the process. Maybe it would have been slower for people to adapt the digital cinema method or the digital cinema feature. But the pandemic actually showed people that this was a possible means. This was an alternative means. As a filmmaker, you want multiple streams of income. You want to be able, I think it was Onke that talked about being a creative and a business person. As a business person, you don't want to create content that is just getting money from one stream. You want to be able to have derivatives. You want to have from here, from there, so that you can sit back and do what you do best, which is create, right? Unless you want to be a hunger artist or, the type that would say art is its own reward, right? Or unless you have some kind of trust fund from your family, so you can afford to just create and not worry about your return on investment. But that's not the situation of many African filmmakers. So what we position ourselves as not necessarily an alternative means per se, but also one of the means through which content creators can make money. Not only making money, but also to create. A lot of people go to physical cinemas for the prestige. But what if we could also create that kind of prestige via online means? What if we could also recreate, as it were, physical cinema within the digital space, but even go further by making it global, by making a global release, by going beyond the continent, by looking into other platforms, other territories. So that's really the vision of it. Make African content more palatable, less, exotic, less of an afterthought, but really making it the center of attraction. Any buyer that comes into ACOMART, you have African films. That's all you're seeing. We're not lost in other European content. We're not lost in other Asian content. It's like coming home. And so you have a variety of content, different genres, different formats, and from different territories and in different languages. So that's really the vision. Just really make African content the main event. we're not an afterthought. We're not, something you just do because you have a little change remaining. We're a force on its own to be reckoned with. And ACOMART is really dedicated to pushing that narrative.
Wow, thank you so much for that elaborate points. Thank you so much, ACOMART, and all that you represent. Madam Cynthia Nwuka, please, could you be gracious to share some film financing success stories and what the filmmaker and financiers did right? Apparently, that's why you're still in the business, encouraging the film industry. Why are you still here? What are the success stories that gives you encouragement and hope for the future that you have prophesied about? Yes, madam.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as a prophetess, we don't look at one angle. So I don't see the industry as just the film, which is just a segment. So I look at all the segments within the creative industry.
Wow.
Because they are all related. If you pull, I try at times. I look at my organogram and functions, and I start looking at how to link all the relationships. And when you do that, you see the linkages can be very interesting. So interestingly, for the film segment, the initial experience wasn't very interesting. And this was because some of the producers felt that the funding was from government, and they looked at it as another form of grant. They also saw Bank of Industry as a government bank. They forgot to read the limited at the end. It's Bank of Industry Limited. So the perception was truly not very okay at the initial stage. And knowing that we also pioneered the approval of the first grant that was handled by one of the ministries, they did not understand the divide. But interestingly, as we progressed, so many of the producers realized that this is business, and it's business that must be done professionally. Even at that initial stage, when we had some challenges, we still had some outliers that I want to mention here. And interestingly, these outliers were ladies. Jade, the producer of Isoke, if you can remember that film, she paid back in 9 months.
Wow.
Even when others were struggling, even when others, some tried to play pranks because of the perception. She was able to run with her loan. Another point I have to give here was that her submission was not even approved.
Wow.
We felt it was very close to other contents in the market. But the zeal, the positive aggressiveness in this lady was so convincing that we decided to give her a try because of her youthful nature. I told her I wanted to use her to also test our youth market. And she actually proved my curiosity right.
Wow.
She picked that word because I told her too, if you fail, you will block so many opportunities of people within your age bracket. And any presentation I make, I will mention you. But that I want to mention her name each time, just as I mentioned the team from Film House and Genesis Delos Cinema. I want to showcase positive influencers that will be our ambassador, not just for the bank, for the country, for the industry, and for the continent.
Wow.
So Jade listened. She walked. She lost weight because she was scared, and she delivered on it.
Wow.
Today, she's a third-time customer of the bank.
Wow.
So she paid the first loan, paid the second loan, and we're processing a third loan. If I have the authority to sign off on any application from Jade, I will do it in 2 days.
Wow.
I'll receive her application, call her for a meeting the next day, discuss with her and sign off.
Wow.
Because she will ensure that she delivers. Another interesting outlier was Agatha Amata, another lady. She had challenges, but you could see that she was resolved not to have her name on the non-performance list.
Wow.
I engaged with her and she was like, my sister, what do you mean by this performing list and non-performing list? I said, these are the ones owing the bank. And we can put your name in the database and every financial institution will see that you're owing.
Wow.
And she was, no, my name can't be there. I want my name to be on the other side, the performing list.
Wow.
And after that conversation, she ran. She created opportunities of viewing the film, private viewing, she did a lot. And she called me on one fateful day, please, can you give me the bank account details to use? And there she cleared her loan too.
Wow.
Progressively also, we've been able to support fresh projects after the first experience. And those projects are performing. Another outstanding one was the funding for 50 contents. And within that slate, this was handled by Iroko. That added a lot of value to Iroko's business plan. And within a record time of about 10 months, he clearly liquidated his obligation to the bank.
Wow.
So the progressive experience has been very encouraging. The lessons we've also learned can't be quantified or placed, we can't place a value on it. And the dreams, the focus, the need to grow the industry, we can't look away but work together to continue to grow the industry. That has been our experience. It's interesting and we're also moving on. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you. Let me allow you, Lady Cynthia, to give your final thoughts before I go to Johannesburg.
On what, please? Final thoughts on what?
Generally.
Oh, generally, I'm excited. I call myself now in the bank a creative banker.
Come on now.
I'm excited that I'm doing something different in the banking industry. Working and supporting businesses within the creative industry is not the usual funding you see. Every project you receive gives you another type of creativity and line of thinking. So you're not bored. It's not stagnant. It's not the same process. So I'm happy about the experience. And I'm also very excited that stakeholders in the industries, especially the entrepreneurs, are becoming more business-like. We can see better structure. We can see the growth path. And I will encourage all of us to have that in mind, to use what we are doing to project Africa in the positive light. We can do it. We have started, and we can do better than what we have done. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to participate in this webinar.
You have had the prophetess herself, Onke, the South African Nigerian. Go for it. What are your passing thoughts, Onke?
First of all, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, so thank you for including us in this very critical conversation. I think that it's great that it is digital, it's virtual, so whoever couldn't join, you can always, I guess, through your marketing platforms, just populate the link so that the conversation lives and it grows. I think I've learned a lot also during the session, but I think just in terms of closing remarks, I think there's lots of potential, but I mean that word very respectfully, because I think people love to use the word potential when it comes to anything that's African related, right? And I think that we've shown that we can do so much with very little. So I think for us, it's way more beyond potential. I just think that it's really an opportunity that needs to be seized sooner than later by us, because if it's not seized by us, somebody else is waiting to do just that. I think the world is looking at Africa when it comes to so many things, content, even just I just think the eyes are on this continent because of what you were saying, I think earlier when I just joined, in terms of like just the fact that we are the youngest continent and we will probably remain that way. So in terms of consumption and for whatever industry, we are a very captive market. But I think be that as it may, that we're a captive market, I think we need to be captivated by African things. And when it comes to film and content, then it has to be African owned things. So I think just to drive the entrepreneurship agenda again, I think it's fundamentally important that our filmmakers, and maybe it's a training process on our end, that we make sure that we focus on, but there's definitely, I think, a need for our filmmakers to really just drive the agenda of filmmaking from a business perspective, with a business hat on, because that's what it is, right? Your films come to life and they're commercially viable, and that's how they get seen around the world. But like, partnerships are absolutely key. We have to collaborate. We have to work together. We've shown how we've done it before. There was a documentary done. I don't know how recent it was, but it was essentially called Silas. And that documentary was a documentary that is proof of exactly what I'm talking about, in the sense that collaboration is something that really goes a long way. So, I mean, essentially that documentary was, it's from 2017, actually. It was based on the life of Liberian activist Silas Siakor. And it was a co-produced production, but it had kind of practitioners from all over the continent. And it had, practitioners from behind the scenes from South Africa and from other countries on the continent. And what happened was, and I mean, the focus of the story was someone from Liberia. And it did so well. It got an executive producer from America, Leonardo DiCaprio. So, I mean, we've seen how this thing can work before. The film in Kenya called Rafiki, right? We had Akina Motoso, who was on that as a director. And it was banned in Kenya because, I guess, of the LGBTQIA laws there. But it had the potential to really be submitted for an Academy Award. So I mean, we've shown how we can collaborate. We've shown how we can partner as practitioners working on the sets, also as industry bodies. It's just, I think, a matter of being more deliberate about it, especially when it comes to what we intend on getting out of it. So if it's a lot more funding for microfilm, or a lot more, or funding for Black animators, or funding for Black documentary makers, or funding that pertains to insurance, you know, ensuring that the insurance policies for films exist throughout, and then also empowering, I think, practitioners within the industry to do it for themselves when there is a lack of that. So when you asked me the question about insurance, Thapelo Mokoena, who's a South African actor, he won a South African Film and Television Award, Best Newcomer Award, a couple of years ago, but he also started a company together with other partners called KMRS, Kapono Makopo Risk Services. So they have a product called Imbe, was an insurance product, and they sponsored the SAFTAs last year, and they sponsored it with this insurance product for the best, for the whoever won the best actor and best actress in a telenovela. So you won 50,000 Rand on the night, but then you also got an insurance policy with Imbeu. So those actors got paid out in the following year a certain lump sum from that insurance policy. And during the COVID pandemic, the actors from the year who won it in 2019, they got paid out in 2019. So that type of cash came in very handy for actors who were kind of left out of different consideration sets when it came to citizens needing money because of the pandemic. So I think that there is definitely a bright future for us. I must reiterate the words of one of the colleagues on this call. I just think it boils down to the way in which we approach it. And there's definitely hope. We just need to kind of really make sure that we reap the benefits of our stories that our practitioners strive so hard to make.
There is hope, says the second prophetess from South Africa. Beautiful. And don't forget, Onke, when you go to Lagos, take pap along and you bring cassava from Lagos, all right?
Okay, I'll do that.
Cassandra, your passing words for us, Cassandra.
Basically, there's never been a better time to be a creative. There's never been a better time. I'm really excited for, and I really love hearing Madam Cynthia and Onked. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but okay. I'm really excited to hear from you. It's always nice to have different perspectives, so that you don't live in a bubble, right? And so that you have a more realistic, more holistic view of the industry. So it's always nice. I'm very grateful for Madam Cynthia for all her insights. I've learned so much, like you would not even imagine, so much. And then Onked, you're amazing. Thank you for bringing that perspective also from your territory and just understanding the different markets too, because I think that's very important, especially from the distribution side. And, I work with ACOMART, and so it's also important to understand how all of this plays out. So I'm very excited.
I think there's something, connection problem.
It's not from my, okay, it's not from my end. Hello?
Cassandra. Okay, sorry about that. Cassandra has a frozen network there. All right, there's Leo Tavares. Leo Tavares, thank you for hanging on, Leo. I hope you have learned so much, you have gained so much, Leo. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. It was really interesting to see this point of view for powerful women and learn a lot about this continent. I was born in Cape Verde, and I'm working for a festival. It calls Series Africa, and we are trying to connect with screenwriters and filmmakers to discuss about the evolution of television, and I'm learning a lot every day. I'm reaching out with a lot of talents, great talents, because we have a lot of talents in the continent, and That's it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Leo. We appreciate your presence. And to all our viewers on the continent and in diaspora and all over the world, it's been a great time. My name is Ola Chris, and I have been your chaperone tonight. It's been my pleasure to present these great resources. Lady Cynthia, Woka, Cassandra, and Onke. Thank you. As we go through the baptism of Onke to Lagos, I hope, Cassandra, you will be on ground too to welcome Onke to Lagos. And then Leo will keep in touch with you. We might have to fly you into Lagos. Lagos is the place to get to. You must visit Lagos before anybody dies.
I have to.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making this place warm. We're getting into winter now in Johannesburg. I'm in Limpopo. We Bapedis, we're getting ready. It's cold here. Okay, you know that. Yo, Watonya, Watonya mo. Yo, Watonya.
Oh, what's a pedi? Kudu.
Mind you,
Is it Zulu you're speaking? What language is this?
Northern Sotho. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day. And
Thank
those
you
who
very
are
much.
Thank you.
those who are envying us in South Africa, come and visit us. Nale Onke will make you feel at home.
Soon.
Yeah. My last visit to South Africa was fun. We went to Durban. We had a film meeting with the team from South Africa.
Wow.
The dance at the airport, the welcoming dance, oh my God, I still sit and think about it. Yes, just so yeah, I enjoyed it.
Amazing.
I enjoyed it.
Please, Lady Cynthia, it's a crime to visit South Africa without the knowledge of Onke. Onke must know.
Okay. So I'll let the organizers know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of your evening.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.